Howdy again, it's Mr. Pete, the original YouTube shop teacher. Welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I am going to make a steering pulley like this 50-year-old one, 60-year-old one for my friend Dan down in Bloomington, and there is the sample that I already made. So can we talk a little bit about king midgets? You know, when I was 15 or 16 years old, of course I was delusional, as all teenagers, and for that matter most people are delusional, but I wanted nothing more than either a king midget, which I saw advertised all the time in Popular Science, or a Crosley, used of course, but I ended up at the age of my first car, I think I was 17, was a Renault Dauphine, one of the worst cars ever produced on the entire continent of Europe. So it was absolutely horrible. But anyway, back to the king midget. I never did see one in the flesh until I saw one in a museum at the age of 45. But my friend Dan down in Bloomington, he was not a roommate, but we went to college together to learn to be shop teachers, and I knew him pretty well. And we have reunited and renewed our friendship, and he collects king midgets. As a matter of fact, he wrote a book on them. Yeah, he wrote the book on king midgets. And he goes to all these festivals and everything. But anyway, and he's building some king midgets, the hot rod, there were several varieties of it. But here's a little pulley that is used, I believe, in the steering, probably for cable. So he sent that to me and said, can you make one for me? And I said, well, can I use aluminum? And he said, yeah. So we're going to go through that. I'll show you how I make one. The order of operations here is extremely important, so watch all that. Now, you're never going to make one of these, but you're going to do similar things in your life in the machine shop, and all of these different steps that I'm going to show you here can be quite useful. So Dan said he would buy me lunch at, I think it was called a Parkview Inn or something like that down in Bloomington. That's 60 miles from here. But you know, and I'm going to do that, you know, it'll be a $12 meal, but you know, I have to pay income tax on that. It's called bartering. And yes, there's a 1099-B or some crazy thing like that that the wonderful IRS puts out. So I have to pay income tax on that $12 meal. Would you believe that? All right, let's get started. Enough introduction. Come on. Okay, I'll be making it out of 1-inch round aluminum. I've already put little center holes into the end, and you'll see why later on. Now, when they made these originally, they would have been made on either a turret lathe or a screw machine, and they always start with a 12-foot bar, so do not cut yourself off a little wafer of this thing. There is no way to hold it. This is your handle. Furthermore, I'm not even going to make it at the very end. There'll be a lot of waste stock, but I don't care because I got 100 feet of this. So we'll start out by using a 3/32 cutoff tool like this, and I'm going to shock you safety Nazis here who just hate to see somebody use a caliper, and this is about 700 thousandths, not very critical at all. But I'll be using this as the machine turns, and that's perfectly acceptable. If it scares you, don't do it. But this is the time-honored method of measuring while the machine is running. If you don't want to do that, turn the machine off, but that's the way it is done. So I don't want to hear anything from the safety Nazis, because you cannot be hurt. Well, yeah, you can, because I've had this one forever. And this went through, it probably went through a milling machine at some point in its career. So you do have to be careful when you're using it on machinery, but that's how I'm going to do it. And then if you look at this, there is actually like a little V pulley. Quite a bit of corrosion on this because, like I say, this is probably from the 50s. 3/8 hole. How wide? Oh, I don't know. 300 thousandths. And what is the angle? Well, that's a tough one because, first of all, it doesn't look very regular, but using this I was able to pretty well get the angle and then transfer it to this, so who cares? Let's make some chips. And I'm using a 200 thousandths gauge block just to determine the width here as I cut that. It doesn't need to be that accurate, and you're saying you're misusing your gauges. Well, I'm not, because I have a whole box full of these that are already rusted and damaged and cannot be wrung, and I like to use them for everyday use in the shop. And they came from the great Westclocks building, where my wife labored so hard before she married this old shop teacher. If I seem particularly loquacious this morning, it's because I could not wake up and I was forced to take a no-dose, so I'm flying high. Alright, I'm on the closing lathe. Make sure that your cutoff tool is perfectly perpendicular to the work. And yes, I'm not making that groove right near the end. I got a little over an inch left there to hang on to. That's the handle. So remember that when we step over to the Atlas lathe. I'm at the Atlas lathe now, and notice that the compound is set for about 25 degrees, and I don't want to have to move the compound from one position to the other when I switch sides on making the little angles there. So here's how I'm doing it, and this is the reason for the center holes, is that this lathe has a very small spindles, so the 1 inch will not fit in there. Only a 7/8 will fit into that little spindle hole as opposed to the closing, and I don't want to use the closing for this because I've got it set up for the cutoff operation. I like to go back and forth, but anyway, so I will grip that end in the chuck and support the other end in the tailstock and cut one of the tapers, and when I'm done with that I will switch it around into that position and cut the other side without changing the compound. And this is very easy to hold, but yet there is a little bit of waste stock, but who cares? I'm not going to say much about the tool, and especially ground, and it's very skinny, it's very narrow, it cuts only on the left hand side. And you know, you have to make special tools for a job like that, but no one's ever going to do this, so this is strictly for entertainment. Does everybody understand that I'm basically cutting a taper here by the compound rest method? All my cutting is done in this manner. I'm ready to cut, and I will knock off a little bit off of the right hand side here so that the tool has room to cut on the left side. This is hard to measure, so I'm not sure that I'm totally done on the left side, but I want to take some off the other side now and then do a little measuring. So now I will move everything down to the left side. That, by everything, I mean the entire carriage. So this is what the setup looks like to cut the other side of the groove, so I don't have to move the compound. Am I explaining too much? And I'm ready to go. There's not a whole lot held in the chuck, which is exactly why I made center holes in both ends. You got to support the work. Okay, I hope this view shows a little bit of what I'm doing, and again 200 thousandths, and that little gauge fits in there, or almost fits in just perfectly. In fact, it looks better than the original, although this may be worn from much use, and I believe again it's for a cable, not a belt, so it's probably not a very critical angle in there at all, just to guide the cable. So now I will take this out and cut it off the length and then face it to the exact length. I think it's 300 thousandths. I got to measure it again. Next, I will cut it off the length. This is waste stock to be thrown away, and then I will face it. And yes, the thickness of the finished pulley is 300 thousandths. So I'm going to face this off before I drill and ream it, trying to get equal legs, or whatever you want to call them, on each side. So it looks good. It really wouldn't matter. Okay, I'm on the home stretch. I'm going to cut it off, but not quite to length, always leaving a little for facing and cleaning up. Okay, I need to face it off the length, so we'll take that out, and I need to face, that's the wrong one. Got to face this end. But, how am I going to do that without crushing it or destroying it? That's not going to work at all. How are you going to do that, you ask? If you have followed my videos, you have seen me use Break My Heart tools, and this is the correct size. So these are split on the end, and you tighten that little set screw. So I will put this on, not quite protruding. I still got a burr there. Like that. Tighten it up, can you see that? And then just put it in the chuck and face it off. These are great little tools. Get yourself some. Who cares? You know, I'm going to explain that expression, who cares, in extra credit. And now I will face it off to 300 thousandths, trying to get both sides the same. I have just enough room here for the caliper jaws. Oh, it's 303 thousandths, so I'm 3 thousandths off. Good enough for who it's for. Sorry, Dan. Dan, I hope you're watching, though. I'll tell you about the video. Well, there they are. What do you think? And I deburred the holes with this and knocked off all the corners with a file. And I just made a vow to myself. I will never, ever in my entire life show filing again, because all I get is criticisms as to how dangerous it is or can be. And you know what? It is, but everything about working in a machine shop is dangerous, and a wood shop far, far more dangerous than a metal shop, in my opinion. So forget about seeing me file. Well, I'm on a rampage with that caffeine. I can't stop talking. I'm like Marty in the movie. Did you ever see Marty, played by Ernest Borgnine? If you don't cry in that movie, you're not human. Well, there they are, Dan, and I hope you like them, and I'm going to collect on that lunch, but really I shouldn't, because Dan is a wonderful man. He just gave me his $5,000 hearing aids that I'm going to have refitted for my ears, so the next time, well, in a few months, I'll be a new man. Now, one other thing I wanted to say before I go into extra credit is that I did essentially the same operation in a video many, many years ago, one of my first videos, when I made an aluminum pulley. It was perhaps 2 or 3 inches in diameter, but the setup and the operations are almost identical. So I'll show you what that video looks like, or the title, should anyone want to watch that ancient video. Here is the video title if you should want to watch it. It's 11 years old. It's a three-parter, and this is part 3 that you're looking at, but you can see the operation's about the same. Well, that concludes the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and that's the results there that I'll mail down to Dan. He's only 50 miles away, but it's still quite a drive down there. So that concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and can use some of these operations in your jobs, in your machine shop. Leave me a comment. Now, if I wasn't too overbearing, stand by for just a few moments of a story about the ravishing redhead, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you would. It would help the channel, which is floundering. Alright, this is extra credit if you can stand it. If you can't, turn it off. About 50 years ago, I still lived in Peru, maybe 45 years ago. My brother, he had a lot of girlfriends, but one of them was a redhead, and we called her the Ravishing Red. And you can imagine why, but we shortened it to the Rav, you know. Are you going out with the Rav tonight? But I was already married, and often my brother Jan and the Rav would come over and spend the evening there. But my brother, you know, he didn't know how to talk to girls, so often he was talking about technical things like this, you know. And she would say, "Who cares?" Because all she was interested in was checking to see if her seams were straight. You know, that kind of gal. So, you know, I saw her in a nursing home now too. Yeah, she's in a nursing home now because she's in her 80s. And, you know, the funny thing is, and this won't surprise you, her hair is still red. But not quite as deep a red. More that orangish red that octogenarians favor. All right. I'll see you next time. Oh, there's some still pictures, about 20 of them. Stand by for those. I always put still pictures at the end. Here is how I film a scene like this. And usually I can see what's in the monitor far better than in real life.